Can I start by saying that the drawing I put on the thumbnail for this video was really carefully, deliberately chosen, and at the end, when it will make sense, I'll explain why I chose it. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who think that if a drawing video is a talking head, then there is nothing really to learn. That there has to be a pen drawing on the paper, and best of all, a magic wand pen. This magic wand pen uses little techniques and tips and tricks to create wonderful drawings on the paper without any effort at all. Once we know the secret of the magic technique. And the master artists are those who have learned all of these magic techniques and tips and who keep them stored in their head. If only I could learn these secrets. And let me say, these techniques and tips, they do have a place. Goodness knows, I've made enough videos about them. How to hold a pen, how to draw a straight line, how to hatch. And I don't just make videos about them, I use them myself when I draw. But these techniques don't teach me how to draw. They're like tools in my drawing toolbox. But the tools I own, as many as I might want to get, they don't actually tell me what project I'm going to make, and they don't tell me themselves which tools I'm going to take out of my toolbox to use and in what way I'm going to use them to create my project. No, I take and use the tools in the way I need to use them according to what I've already decided I'm going to do and how I've worked out that I'm actually going to do it. I can watch dozens or hundreds of videos of drawing techniques. I can analyze the works of master artists and work out what techniques, how they've put the ink on the paper to draw the drawings they've done. And what I'm doing is I'm adding more and more tools to my toolbox and potentially giving myself lots more options when I do a drawing, but none of these tools still will tell me, no matter how grand the artist I got the tools from, none of these tools will tell me what tools to use when. But this is the hard part of drawing. The knowing what to use, when to use it, how to use it, where to use it, why to use it, which is going to create my drawing. It won't be the tools themselves. So, what's the secret? Well, it's not a secret, at least not on my channel. I jabber on about it all the time, but I worry sometimes it gets glossed over, it gets skipped in the anticipation of a magic wand pen on the paper doing its magic techniques. Because what tells me what techniques that I've learned I need to use is my understanding of the drawing process. Well, my understanding of my drawing process, because there will be as many processes as there are people holding a pen, whether we're aware of it or not. This understanding is in my head. That's why this video is a talking head video, but it's the thing that directs all of my drawing, that tells me what to do where. It's the thing that tells me which tools I need to select and to use them, and when to stop using them and use a different tool. And so while there is no one answer that everyone can just take and plug in to their mind, my understanding may be very helpful for you as a starting point for the development and refinement of your understanding. In essence, my understanding of the drawing process is one of translation. And if you've watched many of my videos, you'll have surely heard me use that word before. I'm trying to translate from one visual language into another. Whether that original visual language is reality in front of me or whether it's from a photo, I'm trying to translate this using a pen. I don't understand that I'm trying to copy it with a pen. Now, copying is another understanding of a drawing process. I see something, I copy it, but I think it's a very inadequate understanding for most people for what and how they want to draw. Think of copying a tree. Think of copying all of this behind me. Well, some parts feel easier, like the tree trunks, but what about all this undergrowth, all these thin leaves, all the leaves on the tree? How do we copy those? Perhaps I can copy large leaves, but how do I copy all the leaves around me? But if I'm thinking translation, I'm not trying to copy, I'm trying to say the same thing, have the same meaning, but I'm going to say it differently. I'm going to say it using different words, or in this case, a different visual language, from the visual language of reality or of photos to the visual language that can be spoken with a black ink fine liner. With copying, it's going to lead me into thinking of outlining shapes, because that's how we copy things. But if I'm thinking about translation, I'm going to be thinking about saying the same thing, of creating the same effect, even if I say it a different way. So now I'm not trying to draw leaves. Instead, I'm trying to draw trees where I create the effect of a leaf canopy. And there are numerous techniques I can use to do that, or even the same technique but applied in different ways according to the particular circumstances of that tree at that distance in those conditions. It all depends exactly what I want to say in this context. And of course, that takes us back to the thinking of translation and translation issues. You may have noticed, and I try not to do it too often, that I use the word capture a lot when I'm describing what I'm trying to do in my drawing, because this is how I'm thinking of it. This ties in with my understanding. I'm not trying to draw something, I'm not trying to copy it, I'm trying to capture the feel, the essence, the vibe, whatever word you want to use, of the original in some way, but in a way that I can put on the paper with this. And this understanding also tells me that what my drawing says is in the end what's important, not what any one piece says. That is all the words strung together in the translation, if you like, that will say the meaning. So with this understanding, I'm always tweaking the whole drawing right towards the last minute, and I'm drawing in a way that I'm allowing myself to do that final tweaking at the last minute, because I know I can't erase anything. That my conceptual understanding guides what I do and how I do it, so that towards the end I can see what I've said and I can make those final adjustments to really make sure the meaning I want, as much as is possible at this stage, comes out. So in fact, I'm able to visualize my drawing before I start it, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to work out in my mind, if you like, the words I'm going to use to say it. Because I'm trying to work out, will that say what I want it to say? And when I have a picture of how it's going to look at the end, it doesn't have to be exact, approximate's enough. Now I can start to think of what techniques I might need to use to say fully, to capture the visual effects in my reference, what I want to say, to create the visual impact in my drawing that in my head I can, at least in a vague way, see. And it's this understanding and this thinking I do before I go near a pen that now starts to say, well, you could do this, you could use this, you could try this, this edge could be this way, these darknesses could be another way, these complicated shapes behind me, they would work best if they were done this way, and so forth. Sometimes if I'm making something, I might even get a scrap piece of wood and get a few of my tools and see if I can carve what I want into the wood, or see if I can cut it in the way I want to cut it and get the result that I'm wanting. And that's a lot like, again, if you've watched my videos, I often talk about where before I actually start to draw, I get a scrap bit of paper, I get the pens I think I'm going to use, and I start to experiment with the visual techniques, with the particular drawing techniques that I think I'm going to use, but I see how they go, using them for the particular effects I want in this scene. But it's my understanding of what I'm doing that lets me visualize an end result that I'm after, that lets me choose the techniques I think will work, and then to assess whether they do work well or whether I need to change something about what I've just experimented with. So having worked out, yes, these are the tools I want to use, I now start my project, I start my drawing, and I seek to translate the visual language of my reference into another language spoken with my pen. And over the 4 years that I've been doing freehand ink drawing, this increasing understanding and then refining of it and then using it fully has continually guided me into developing and discovering better ways, better words if you like, in my pen language of saying things that I see in my photo reference language. And if you go back and look at my very first drawing videos from I think 2021, you'll see the drawings look very different. And while I was very happy with them then at the stage I was at in my thinking and skill development, I can see so many ways now where as I've come to develop and understand my concept of my drawing process, that understanding has actually guided me and pushed me further. Ironically, the more videos I made and the more I explained my process, I explained my understanding, the clearer it became to me. And as it became clearer, I was able to understand it and explain it more. And the more I could do that, the more easily I could apply it every time I sat down to draw. And I believe this is why my drawings have improved in my thinking the way I think they have. It's not that I need to be critical of what I did 4 years ago, but what I'm doing now is closer to what I've always been wanting to do. But 4 years ago, I didn't understand enough to understand the possibilities of where my drawing might go, let alone be thinking of ways to get to that point. But the frustrating thing for me as a teacher, as well as a drawing artist, is that I know that this understanding of a drawing process, of working this out, of thinking about it, of sitting with it, of developing it, of trialing different things, of modifying things, is a lot harder, takes a lot more effort than picking up quick tips for cross-hatching. Learning ways of putting marks on the paper is always going to be easier. Even when it's difficult, it's still going to be easier than having an understanding of the ways these marks might be used and how to make the right decisions as to when to use them and if they need to be modified in some way. But I've come to realize that my understanding of the drawing process, this whole translation metaphor, is actually the heartbeat of every drawing. It's the rhythm, the consistency that pulls together all parts of the drawing process and weaves them together into some sort of coherent whole in my finished drawing. It's also the thing in the end that feeds the development of my drawing style, of what makes my drawings look recognizable as my drawings. And if you don't have an understanding of the drawing process, or perhaps you've been used in the understanding that drawing is copying, but you've come up against some of the problems, some of the shortcomings of that understanding, then please feel free to adopt my understanding and use it in whichever way it's useful for as long as it's useful, but to springboard to a different understanding when you realize that will take you more directly to the place that you're wanting to go in your drawings. And if you're thinking, I've got no idea how to work out what my drawing process is, well, let me give you a little tip. Start by asking, what am I doing when I draw? What am I trying to do? Where am I trying to go? What sort of drawings do I want to have at the end? Because knowing where we want to go is the key, I think, in working out the best way that we're going to get there. To work out what we're trying to do with this journey. And I said at the start, I'd tell you at the end why I chose that particular thumbnail drawing. And the reason is that comes from a photo that I took when I had the very good fortune to be in Paris in 2015. And I'd looked at that photo often, thinking I would love to draw this scene. This wonderful park that was absolutely sun-drenched on a high summer's day in the Place des Vosges, I think in the Marais district of Paris. But every time I looked at the reference, I thought, this is just too hard. I can't draw this. It's going to look terrible. And I thought, I'll have to leave it. I don't think I'll ever be able to draw this. And then finally, 3 years later, I look at it and I think, you know, I can start to picture what I have to do in my mind to draw this. I can start to visualize how my drawing will look with the language I've developed that I have at my disposal, so that I can actually say on the paper, using my pen, a similar thing to what's on this photo. So I then drew it and it became one of the many videos I've made, but it became way more than that. It became a very encouraging milestone for me to see that I have been developing my understanding of drawing, and from that I have been developing my ability to draw. And so I share all of this with you, hoping that for some of you at least, this can really set you on a path, not for picking up tips and techniques, but more importantly, for starting to understand what you're doing when you draw and work out what sort of drawings you're wanting to have at the end, and work out the way you're going to get there and what tools you need to get along the way to get there. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers, and that's enough talking from this talking head for now. So all the best with it, but in the end, whatever you do and however you do it, and for whatever understanding of process you're developing in doing it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye. I'd actually been descending down a gorge as I stopped for each of these clips, and I got down the bottom with this final one. This was the gorge that was right behind me as I videoed this last section, and you can see the creek down in the bottom there. Thought I'd just show it to you before the end.